Hello, I'm Poseidon. Welcome to Pantheon Talks. Why are character types important? At the core of all great storytelling lies a compelling array of character types. By assigning a label to a character, it helps the writer to understand the purpose of the character within the story. This helps to eliminate the non-essential and useless characters. For example, one of the biggest issues with a story that has a large cast is that creators will often keep characters around that have fulfilled their purpose and no longer have a particular role to play within the story. They become background furniture and are constantly in scenes that don't require their presence. It's important to understand a character's role or type when we initially create them. Studying character types helps us to create a solid foundation for the cast we assemble. Today, we will look at a few common character types that appear in most stories. Of course, these are not all character types, just a place for us to get started. Comment below which character types you'd like an in-depth analysis and breakdown of. With that said, let us begin with character type number 1, the protagonist. This is your main character. No protagonist, no story. So develop this character first. Introduce them immediately and start layering in personal detail that gives readers reasons to care about what happens to them. They are the focus of the story, the center of attention, the person we want our readers to invest in, care about, and root for. Essentially, the protagonist of the story is the one whose goals and ambitions are a part of the main plot. They drive the plot and pursue their goals. They change and grow as our story progresses. A typical main character should possess characteristics that are redeemable and lovable, yet flawed. They are who our readers will grow the most attached to and want to see win and succeed in their ventures throughout the story. No matter what genre our story is, we will need to craft a strong main character. Here are a few tips to creating a strong protagonist. Give them redeemable, human flaws. Add heroic qualities that can emerge during the climax. They must have a character arc, meaning they should become a different person by the end. They can be better or stronger or worse as long as they are different from how they started. Resist the temptation to create a perfect lead character. Perfection is boring. It's always a good idea to look at examples of well-developed protagonists. Here are some to consider. Ruka from Shelter, J-Ho from The Strongest Florist, and Ji-Ho from Double Click. Moving on to character type number 2, the antagonist. An antagonist is a character who is in direct opposition to the protagonist. Their actions deliberately hinder the protagonist from achieving their goal. This relationship helps build conflict and propels the story forward. And let me tell you, the soul of any story is conflict. One key element to consider when making an antagonist is that it does not need to be a person. We will dive deeper into that in another video. For now though, we're specifically referring to them as a character. Creating a good antagonist is like creating a good protagonist. It needs a solid foundation to be successful. I believe a good place to begin is by crafting the antagonist's backstory. It must be compelling. Some of the most interesting villains have had bad things happen to them, which often leads to them not seeing themselves as bad individuals. They see their actions as justified. As their character begins to take shape, keep a few things in mind. What are this character's flaws and how do they logically oppose the protagonist? When looking at the character's flaws, try to link their flaws to their backstory. Of course, if you can't, it's not the end of the world. Oftentimes, flaws are what make a character interesting, and unlike the protagonist, the antagonist's flaws do not need to be redeemable. Next, explain how the antagonist is powerful enough to go up against the protagonist at their best. Maybe they're the smartest person in the world, or incredibly strong, or a master manipulator, or whatever logical reason you've created for them to be powerful within their own right. The audience needs to understand and trust that the antagonist is a logical obstacle and or threat to the protagonist. Make them a worthy foe by giving them realistic and believable motives. The antagonist will oppose our protagonist at every turn. An example of this is if the protagonist needs a toothbrush, the antagonist buys all the toothbrushes. The more formidable your antagonist, the more compelling your story will become. Let's go over a few tips to creating a strong antagonist. We must give them a compelling backstory, make them powerful. Think outside the box here. We must have them force the protagonist to make difficult choices. And finally, we must use our antagonist to cause our protagonist to grow. Some examples of well-developed antagonists include Soveishu from Remarried Empress, Jonghyuk from Omniscient Reader, and Ryu from The Boxer. Character type number 3 is the sidekick. Our protagonist should not hold the entire story. A sidekick is a secondary character whose primary role is to aid the protagonist as they work to achieve a goal, overcome an antagonist, or undergo necessary internal development. They are not there for comedic relief, being a placeholder, or any other temporary reason. Our protagonist will need help, and that help comes in the form of supporting characters like their sidekick. Our sidekick should be a vital part of the story. Oftentimes, these characters will have an important connection to our main protagonist and affect the story in a significant way. To create a strong sidekick, we must allow them to support the protagonist, but don't let them just be a yes man. Sidekicks can create tension and conflict while supporting a character. So create opportunities for them to help the protagonist so they can have their time to shine. Cade from Alexi, Kun from Tower of God, and Chase from I Am the Grim Reaper are just a few examples of well-developed sidekicks. Now on to character type number 3, the love interest. This type of character is a lover or potential lover to another character, but usually the protagonist. For any genre, a love interest can be a great source of conflict. By giving your protagonist someone to care about, it helps to ensure they have difficult choices to make at crucial points in the plot. Plus, everyone likes a bit of romance, even the most hardened action heroes. Love makes people do interesting things. That is why the love interest character type is such an interesting role. Consider what people have done for love: conquer nations, kill, steal, and tons of other questionable deeds. And remember, not every love is created from the same set of circumstances. There are lots of love interest tropes to look into. Friends to lovers, love triangles, second chances at love, rags to riches romances, star-crossed lovers, opposites attract, faded romances, pretend relationships, love at first sight, royal romances, arranged or political marriages, enemies to lovers. There are too many to name. So how can you create one of these love interests and make it strong? Craft them a life outside of their romantic life. Do not make the love interest too perfect. Make them human and flawed, and give clear motivation and obstacles to overcome. Look to Hades from Lore Olympus, Lily from Your Smile is a Trap, and Zeta from Down to Earth for some great examples of well-developed love interests. Now, on to the final character type we'll discuss in this video, the foil. A literary foil is a character whose purpose is to spotlight or draw attention to the qualities and traits of another character, most often the protagonist. This can be accomplished without necessarily creating opposition or conflict. A foil can even be a friend of the character they are supposed to draw attention to. Creating a foil makes a great counterpart for a main character and helps the audience to have a better understanding of the character's personality and actions. By spotlighting a character's weaknesses or strengths, it helps them become more relatable to our audience. To create a good foil, you need to understand the character's traits you're trying to spotlight. This character needs to be more than just foil. Give them additional depth. How you do that is up to you. Only foil important traits that have an impact on the story. Here are a few non-Webtoon examples of a well-developed foil. Effie Trinket to Katniss Everdeen and Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games. Draco Malfoy to Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. Dr. John Watson to Sherlock Holmes and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes. These 5 character types are some of the most common, and by understanding and applying them effectively, we can elevate the stories we are telling. Now, I want to hear from you. What are some different character types that you use to enhance your stories? And what is the most important character type to develop in a story and why? Also, what character types are the most fun for you to develop? Comment your answers down below. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider subscribing and leaving us a like on the video. A huge thank you and shout out to our patrons. If you would like to support us while getting some extra content we don't post on Instagram or YouTube, head on over and check out our Patreon. We're very active on Instagram, so if you want to chat with us, feel free to stop by. I'll catch you in our next video.